So welcome back to another episode, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about my high school art teacher. Yes, I mentioned him in an episode called Old Fun Stuff, episode 2, and it was near the end of the episode that I mentioned this art teacher and how strange and funny they were, and I'm quite nostalgic about this guy, and I found a whole bunch of my high school art books. Some recent ones that I just dug out of the closet, and I'm like, oh my god, some of this artwork really took me back. So I thought I'd show you guys some of the artwork while I talked about my high school art teacher. And it was grade 8, 1988. I'd started high school and I went in for my very first art class, and I was so excited because art was the world to me. It still is. I just absolutely love drawing, painting, doing anything to do with art. So I was so excited to meet my high school art teacher. Who would this great prophet be? And I walked in and I'm looking around the classroom and I'm like, where is this guy? And there was this very short Japanese man called Mr. Shimizu. And I still to this day don't know his first name. He was always, you know how you're in high school? It's always the last name you know. And it was Mr. Shimizu. And I met this guy, and he was a very short guy. He was like, and I'm like, hey, Mr. Shimizu, pleased to meet you. And he's like, grab a seat. I'm like, okay. I'm like, this guy's not very friendly. He was so deadpan all the time. And the thing is here's what's really interesting about Mr. Shimizu is he wasn't an artist. He was a math teacher. And I guess in high school at that time, they're like, okay, well, he's teaching math. Can you teach art as well? And he's like, oh yeah, I'll read some books on it. I'll teach art. This guy could not draw worth crap. He was the worst. This sounds terrible of me to say, but he was the worst artist I'd ever seen. And I was like, how did this guy get a job as an art teacher? And I thought, it gave me a lot of hope for the future. I'm like, maybe I could be an art teacher one day. I was so disappointed when he was showing us examples on the chalkboard. You know, he was drawing stuff out. I was like, oh my god. He had no idea how to draw. But the one thing he could do was critique. That was the one thing he could do was critique. And I'll just tell you a little bit more about this guy is that he was in his late 50s at that point, nearly into his 60s. As he's a short Japanese man. And this was weird. This is weird for any high school. I don't care what year it is. He wore leather pants. Black leather pants. I don't even know how to quantify that. It was a huge joke to us in high school. All my friends would laugh about this. The guys, the girls, everybody would laugh about it. This guy was a living meme in our high school. We just couldn't believe it. He was so surreal. He was such a surreal character. And oh my god, so the one thing he loved to do was critique artwork. He'd tell us all to draw something, we'd bring it up a couple days later after we'd finished it, and he'd sit there and you'd sit next to him in the classroom, and he would talk to you very intimately, but like, and I'll never forget, I mentioned it in this old episode I did, how he would be looking at my artwork. And my artwork was a lot of different things. Let's have a look at my artwork here. This is my grade 8 art book, and I'm going to get to some color stuff. Do you know, I found something really weird in here to begin with. This is just surreal to find. We had to do like a pencil caricature of somebody. And it's like, okay, who the hell is that? Even I looked at it the other day, I was like, who is that? I'm like, oh my god, it's Bill Sienkiewicz. The artist on Elektra back then. He was this great painter guy for Marvel Comics, and he was something else. He did a lot of stuff for a lot of different companies, but I guess I saw his picture in a comic books like journal or something, and I was like, he was such an idol of mine. I drew him because we had to do this portrait. And let's have a look in here. Let's get to the color stuff. Actually, it's funny you can tell what I was into. At the time, I was drawing. I had to draw logos, and I drew the Elektra thing. So you can see why I had Bill Sienkiewicz in there. Look at some of the stuff that I was doing. This is so funny. I did the Watchmen cover. Obviously, it was so symbolic. This is grade 8 as well. Here, this one fucked me up, dude. This totally fucked me up. So look at this. Isn't that interesting? It's like, okay, I'm doing some kind of drawing. I'm showing you this. I'm going to do a side by side. You know what's surreal about this picture? About a month ago, I went onto eBay and I was like, oh, I remember this great graphic novel, Dazzler. And I remember seeing the cover of it, and I always wanted it. It was more because of the cover than it was anything else. So I ordered it off eBay, and to my surprise, isn't that surreal? I must have copied this in 1988. Oh my god, I love the painting style. I think, is that a cover? Is this Bill Sienkiewicz? I think that is. Go figure. Everything's coming together. Like the universe is surreal, man. I drew this in '88. I bought this the other day, and I just had childhood memories of it, but I couldn't place it why. Boom, and then we get all the stuff of Bill Sienkiewicz in here, who did the artwork. That is something else. Wow, I'll tell you, that tripped me out when I saw it. I was copying a lot back then. I was emulating a lot. There's Robotech the Sentinels. Unfortunately, I looked at some of this artwork I did back then. That's Ren Xerox there as well. Mr. Shimizu gave me a good mark on this one. Look at that. That is just nuts. This was my own comic book series I was working on back then called Vampire Unit. It was just people using mecha suits. That's really all it was about. Yeah, it's really a wild to see some of my old anime drawings, and yeah, this is, as I say, this is nearly 28 years ago. A lot of this stuff, and here's me copying the old paintings back then. Yeah, I always loved painting, but I never really got into it too much. Oh, Mr. Shimizu gave me an excellent on this one as well. There's some more Vampire Unit stuff. I was really into drawing with felts. Look at that. That's crazy stuff. That's really crazy stuff. And the next one, I mean, I hadn't seen this in nearly 27 to 29 years. Look at that. That is just wild. That was a crazy guy. That's just before I had a home computer and Photoshop. Like, I just never had anything like that. Just wild. Just wild. I had such an imagination. I was so into artwork. It was wild. Oh. Look at this, guys. Oh, boy. Could that be Final Fantasy V? It sure could be. That's when it first came out, I think. Wow. Here's the story about Mr. Shimizu I want to tell you guys, is that whenever I would bring up some artwork to him, I was really into drawing really like Warhammer stuff and some really dark kinds of material. And whenever I'd show him anything, like I'd show him this, he'd always like, this is what he would do. He'd always go, "Too satanic, John, too satanic." I was just like, what are you talking about? Too satanic. Yeah, I was drawing some, like, look, this is just being, you know, this is artistic freedom. You know, I was drawing some crazy stuff. I didn't even know where it was directed from. It was just coming out of me at times, you know? That's how artwork kind of goes. Yeah, I've shown this before. Borg Man going on there. I was really into anime. He liked my artwork. That's just from Warhammer. But he'd always be like, way too satanic. Somebody said in the comments, it was probably the very beginning of getting triggered. And that's from Megazone there. I want to show that again. And yeah, it's great to be able to show you guys some of this artwork. I really want, you know, it's been in my personal collection. Nobody's ever seen any of this. That's what's so wild about it. Nobody's ever seen any of this at all. It's a bit of a crying shame. Like, that's why I really want to share it with you guys. And just tell you about Mr. Oh! This is fucked up. This is fucked up. This is from a manga called, I think, Pineapple Army. I was like, I guess I drew him. This is supposed to be Mr. Shimizu, and I wrote, "Mr. Shimizu at war with class." And he's got some gun up, and he's like, "Sit down, class." That's how he used to talk. He'd be like, "Sit down, shut up." More Warhammer stuff. This triggered him. This was triggering him. This is way too satanic. Holy, there's some stuff I've never shown before. This is kind of wild. Look at that, Wings of Oniamis. I was drawing that a long time ago. Look at that, Vampire Princess Mew. I wrote Oriental Mask. Just to kind of, it's pretty neat to see some of this. Oh, I wonder who this is, Gundam fans. Look at that. Look at me emulating a Mano back then from Final Fantasy. That was just his kind of work in general back then. Kind of some Dragon Quest-y Final Fantasy thing going on there. What is this? This is abstract animal. I only got an 8 out of 10. Fuck you, Mr. Shimizu. Look at this. Look at this. Fatal Fury. That great SNK fighting game. I told you I was a fan. I told you. I can back all this stuff up. This is some crazy. This is one for the history books for me. I haven't seen this, honestly, in nearly 27 years. Kabuki, one of my favorite characters of all time. Oh my, I didn't even know I drew this. I must have drawn it. I remember the very first time I heard about Far East of Eden as a PC Engine RPG series. The very first time I had heard about it was I saw a little screenshot of some anime cutscenes, and it was like, I remember thinking that the character art was so unique. I'd never seen this character designer before. And Kabuki, I was like, I didn't know that was Kabuki back then, you know? It was a very interesting character to me. Wow, guys, that book really fucked me up. Oh, I gotta show you guys. The UN Squadron. That's when Desert Storm was going down, so. Mr. Shimizu, he was a good guy in his own way. He had no idea really about art. He just had an idea about what he didn't like. It pretty much was that. He couldn't go quite beyond that and see the bigger idea of what art is and what art really encompasses. But he was a good-hearted man. And I got a lot of memories about him and just his plain demeanor about him going, John, too satanic. This is too satanic, John. Come on. Come on, John. That's how he talked. Seriously. But while I was going through all of these art books, I got a little choked up, because Mr. Shimizu is long passed away now. And oh my god, I'm getting shivers from this. Isn't art surreal? I drew Mr. Shimizu. This is going to be very hard to see. This is the very first picture I drew of him. He would model for us, and we'd have to draw him. And the comment from him is, good drawing, but try to draw bigger or larger. And a year or two later, that's when I drew Mr. Shimizu sitting in his chair there with his hands behind his head. And this picture here of him standing on a table, on a chair, quite literally. And it was really surreal to see this and to remember the man through my artwork. Now, in my high school yearbooks, there's pictures of him in there. A few of them, but not that many. I never knew his first name. And my drawings are the only thing that I have of him. This is the way I remember him, through my drawings. I mean, life is really strange at times, isn't it? That the only way I can remember Mr. Shimizu is from how I remembered him. I think what also hit me really strange was that when I was drawing Mr. Shimizu, little did he ever know that one day, 28 years in the future, I'd be pulling out my art books, my drawings of him, and showing him and talking about him to a lot of people out there in the internet world. I bet he couldn't have even imagined that, it was wild. And that's why I wanted to come and talk about my high school art teacher, Mr. Shimizu. So anyways, guys, until next time.